What's up, everybody? It is February 22nd, the year 2022, 2/22/22 on a Tuesday. Adam Kaufman, Matt Meiselman, Chirag Hira here to break things. Probably more than two topics. We'll get into a whole lot. A lot of NBA retrospective on the All-Star break, looking ahead to the second half, maybe mixing a little Aaron Rodgers later, who may have 1 or 2 years left in his career, or he could just be done. We'll see. Guys, how are you?
I'm great. Did you know the date on Tuesday, 2/22, February 22, will both be a palindrome and an anagram? The date will read from the same left to right, from right to left, and upside down.
So when's and upside down? How about that?
And upside down.
Yeah, that's. I was just gonna say, like, when's the next one? Is it like? I don't know. I don't know. We don't.
That's for Twitter to figure out.
But no, the upside down. That's a whole other level.
Yeah, exactly.
Deep stuff. Meiselman, you coming in hot? Because Chirag just brought the fire early.
I have nothing that can even compare to what Chirag just did. That's I'll just say hi. Like I'm doing pretty well with this All-Star break. It's been a low-key last few days compared to what was going on before. I don't know anything about these symmetrical days on the calendar. That's your stuff. I'm just hearing about this today for the first time. I didn't know this was coming. I didn't know this was going to be some kind of like big occasion, but I guess it's cool. I guess numbers are cool.
This is like the numbers people with the calendars. This is you know what it is. This is like all those May the 4th be with you people that just went next level with just all amped up with 2/22/22. People have been counting it down for weeks.
Oh yeah.
People are way too bored.
Ever since it was February 2nd, it was 2/2/22. People just wait. Just you wait. 20 more days, baby. We're going to get another one. Oh, something else. All right, let's talk about the All-Star break in the NBA because it was interesting, I guess, in the sense that, Rising Stars game, whatever. Like nobody watched that, let's be honest. And then, of course, you get all the events that went on Saturday night. The skills challenge, they put some new wrinkles in there and it was fine. It was all right. The 3-point contest honestly should probably be the headliner. It's always at least a little bit compelling, especially when you have a big man like Karl Anthony Towns, who had the longest odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook to win that event and went out and did it, made some people some money for sure. Then the dunk contest, arguably the worst that we've ever seen in dunk contest history. Obviously none of the headliners, none of the guys in it were these big names. You had Obi Toppin go out and win the event after being a runner-up last year, but you had him and Jalen Green, who was the favorite. You also had Juan Toscano Anderson. You had Cole Anthony, and it was just it's fine. And then, of course, the game itself and the celebration of the league at 75 years, that was a lot of fun. Let's start with Saturday night, though. Chirag, you were putting your picks out, like crazy and posting all the DK Sportsbook odds and everything like that on your Twitter page going into that event. What'd you think?
I hit fluke 2 of them. Pretty excited about that. I had a feeling the home team was going to win something, so I went with the Cavs, and then there's just something about guys that are in their second dunk contest for whatever reason. When they don't win it that first year, they have this like, I don't know, like kind of like, here, we'll give you the trophy type of deal. And add in the fact that Obi's actually had some dope in-game dunks during the year. I just thought it was just too right for him to not take that, considering 2 of them were point guards. And then the other guy was, is he a power forward? Is he a small forward? Does he have bounce like that? Like, is he there? Like, I don't know. That was a snooze fest, but I'm just glad I got 2 of my picks right. I'm just disappointed that I was going to change one because I was debating Zach LaVine and some other, and Patty Mills. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whatever.
Either way, you weren't going with Cat.
No, I was the reason why I looked at it is because I got the split. So I got the splits from DraftKings Sportsbook, and I picked those because they had the lowest odds and betting handle and split. So they had Trae Young was at the top, so that was the chalk. So I was like, okay, I had a feeling about Trae. He's a good shooter, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. He was still there, and he was a chalk. But the betting splits had Patty Mills and Zach LaVine at the bottom and Cat right under them. So I went for Patty Mills and Zach LaVine because they were both 8%. So you know how I feel about the 8s and Kobe's and all that.
Yeah.
And it's the months and yada, yada, yada. So I was like, all right, let me roll with 2 Kobe's. But obviously it wasn't right.
Matty, Towns has to come back and defend his crown next year, though, right?
I think so. Maybe should get in the dunk contest too. I don't really think it could be any worse, to your point. Yeah, Sherrod kind of outlined why I stayed away from betting on these events, just like having to kind of go back and forth and guess, and it's just hard to quantify anything. So we actually did, for Sunday's All-Star game, get relevant news that I didn't have enough conviction to attack very aggressively, but Donovan Mitchell didn't play because he was sick, and Chris Paul, we found out before the game, was only going to play a couple minutes because of a hand injury. Those guys were on the same team, and that was a team, that was LeBron's team that already had a vacant roster spot for James Harden, who wasn't healthy enough to play. Like, that was a pretty shorthanded all-star team. And we got Steph Curry playing a ton of minutes, which, I mean, I guess whatever the over you bet on Steph Curry's points, it hit very, very fast. Like, it didn't matter, I guess, how many minutes he was going to play. But like, Darius Garland got some extra run. Ultimately, though, it's an all-star game. Like, you're not going to be able to predict rotations and anything like that. But it was kind of cool to have a real life type regular season NBA news cycle for the All-Star game. That's not something I can ever remember. Granted, I haven't been following All-Star games for that long, but at least over the last few years, like, we haven't gotten a couple players ruled out for an All-Star game right up before lock. That was like very unusual for me. So, I mean, Curry obviously was amazing. The total movement ended up being interesting, where like, if you bet the over early, you won, and if you bet the under late, you also won. Like, it came in at the 323, which was right between the opening and closing line. So yeah, we always talk about how important getting the line, like getting the best number is, and normally you don't think that's going to matter for an all-star game, but like, it really did matter for this one.
And Sherrod, we were slacking about this just before the show, just the fact that obviously the new format in the league over the last few years, and winds up being, like Matt said, the 163-160 final with, you know, a little bit more defense in that fourth quarter, after it was just kind of fun and showcasing and fancy in-game dunks, better in-game dunks than we saw in the actual dunk contest, by the way. And, you know, Steph Curry obviously going ham in that third quarter, but in the fourth quarter, when things start to matter, they start to count, and you have guys caring a little bit more. It was just a fun, really, really interesting, compelling game with obviously the top stars in the world.
Yes. One note to add to Matt's point before we jump into the rest of the All-Star game. Yeah. The last time somebody sat out and was breaking news like that was Jimmy Butler. He got food poisoning or an illness as well.
There you go.
What happened to him?
I think he was a starter for that one too. So it was like a really big
right.
Game. But that was the last one. But overall, I mean, I honestly thought like the way that that LeBron was trying in that first kind of period and then missing his threes and doing what he was doing, he was actually trying to go for the Cleveland MVP. And then it ended up being the boy from Akron. He was born. Steph did it. I was like, wait, why? Wait. I was like, I should have thought of that, because I bet on LeBron, and then I mentioned betting on others. So I bet on Tatum because it's the new Kobe trophy. So I was like, okay, who's the Kobe guys? All right, Kobe. And then who's the hottest player in the league right now? Luka. So that was kind of my process and how I was betting it. But should have went to Steph. Obviously, he's the all-time leader in three-pointers and had an amazing one. And that news, Matt,
sitting there on the bench too, actively going after the points record. I mean, he found too short of AD, Anthony Davis, but he was, yeah, I mean, he's like, yeah, I'm trying to score 52.
Not only that, but that's kind of what the news actually played into it, because CP3, they're another point guard, and Donovan Mitchell, another guard in the game, were not able to do it. So it's like, there was actually actionable information to look at that. And I'm like, I regret it looking back, and I'm like, wait, hold up. Because the thing is, usually it's unlikely that the All-Star game MVP is somebody that comes off the bench. Most of the time, I think I saw a number, it was like 10 of the last 13 or 11 of the last 13 have been starters. So that's like usually where I try to find the edge.
Yeah, especially with the new format where the starters actually are playing more than the bench, because the fourth quarter is shorter. The game's really only 3.5 quarters.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't actually realize that till the fourth quarter started. It was like, oh wait, we're already in crunch time now when the fourth quarter is beginning, because it's only a race to 25. So yeah, like, Jimmy Butler, what did he play? 8 minutes? Like there were a bunch of guys who just did not get that much game action.
Yeah.
Well, and the most obvious thing should have been too. Like we were talking about this last week going into the game. If for anyone that obviously played the showdown contest, or I don't even know what the lines were as far as prop bet single guys for someone like Jared Allen, but you look at him at stone cold minimum 3K, obviously coming off the bench, but the hometown guy. Like I always am going to defer to the guy, especially when it's one guy in that all-star city getting an opportunity and it's not a star necessarily. Like obviously it's in LA, it's LeBron, fine, whatever, throw it out the window. But you're in Cleveland and it's Jared Allen and he's the cheapest guy available. Of course he's going to get some run, he's going to get some opportunity, and he was awesome.
Yeah.
I like that stuff. I like buying into those narratives.
Yeah, I went with Jared Allen at 100-1 for MVP. I think it was Allen and Garland were both 100-1 for MVP. So to me, those were worth like putting small bets on just in case. I mean, there was a point that I think the live MVP odds were up during the game. And there was a point where Booker was in the hunt for it despite not starting. I think there's a thing in all-star games too, where like if someone gets going like the way Curry did, no one really cares about the outcome that much. Like we're just going to keep feeding that guy because it's fun. So like if Darius Garland had hit his first 4 shots, let's say, like the rest of the game might have been devoted to just like, let's see if Darius Garland can break the scoring record at home. Something like that. Like you never know what's going to happen with those things.
Yeah, exactly.
We're here with you another 20, 25 minutes. You have any questions, shout us out. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you're finding us. Talk a little bit about the NBA's, quote unquote second half. In reality, guys, we only have a quarter of the season left. I mean, we're basically 75% of the way through the year for everybody. So this is, it's NBA action gears back up on Thursday in a couple of days, and it's boom, stretch run. It's basically like entering the fourth quarter of that Elam ending here of the regular season that we're all excited for, and it should be a lot of fun. Looking at some of the team futures on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, this really shouldn't shock anybody. The Warriors and Suns co-favorites at plus 425 to win the championship. I do like, Matt, we did a show late last week. I think it was Friday, in fact. And just since that time, the Nets are no longer the favorites to win the title. They're now plus 450. So still right there in the conversation. I already said I wouldn't be at all shocked if they missed the playoffs, let alone, not win the championship. You got the Bucks at plus 700 to defend their crown. Sixers as well, which interesting number. I mean, I know they went out and they acquired an all-star and essentially didn't lose one because Ben Simmons hasn't played all year, and now you're getting James Harden. We'll see how he meshes with Joel Embiid, who is playing out of his mind right now. There are some interesting teams with longer odds as you get into the 25-1 range and even a little bit higher than that, obviously. But where would you be zeroing in right now, Chirag?
Zeroing in would be trying to understand injuries, rotations, kind of researching, taking this time to research and look at the teams that are coming back or who has the most easiest schedule, looking at things like that, because what you can do right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook is, regular season win totals are still available, stuff like that. So I think the biggest part is just really trying to understand who has the most to win or lose. And as we come out of this all-star break, what you're going to see is a lot of teams turn it on to, all right, the rookies are going to play. So you're going to have an opportunity to pick up and hit some lines or hit some games where you're like, there's going to be a lot of news that just comes in because they're like, well, this team doesn't feel like playing today, or they have a rest, they have 4 games in 5 nights, or yada, yada, yada. So it's going to be a lot of news coming up, and being up to date with teams' rosters and kind of how the minutes have been playing out is going to be really, really important. Like, for example, you look at Cleveland. They've been a really, really strong team this year, but now they have the addition of Karis LeVert with Darius Garland. And what that does is that kind of puts together this team in that ball handler, because they had Colin Sexton, who was amazing at the rim. He's a really good scorer. And now Karis LeVert that can do similarly. So maybe that's a team that doesn't have much data because those two guards haven't played together, but that's something that could change as something that you could look into in games that they're playing against maybe tanking teams, or they're playing up in their competition and there's a bigger spread than maybe you're not used to. But I think the Cavs, for example, is just somebody that brand new team, basically put not fully brand new, but like a new team with a new addition that takes ball handling responsibilities, and seeing how their rotation kind of plays out is one of the things that I'm looking at.
Do you have a favorite among the favorites before we get into some of the long shots? So let's say any of those top half dozen teams that are all plus 1,000 or better.
Not plus 1,000 or better. I just think that if James Harden comes back and has this motivation factor, and I feel like his hamstring isn't actually an issue, that the Sixers are the best bet here, because Joel Embiid is just playing out of his mind. If he doesn't get hurt, and James Harden is James Harden, like all you did was basically sub in James Harden for Seth Curry on his team. Like,
right,
the upside, and you don't know what's going to happen with Brooklyn. Chris Paul dealing with that thumb injury. As much as I want them to win it and play well, they're going to do it. Draymond Green coming back can push the Warriors. The Bucks are the Bucks and the Heat are the Heat. But like, I think the best upside differentiator, as I mentioned with the Cavs, there's a new player involved here, and he's a ball handler, focused usage, high usage player that provides me to look at the Sixers as potentially the champion. But I know Matt's not on that.
It makes you wonder, Matt, with Chris Paul, like how long can a guy be due, right? Otherwise, I mean, he could be another Charles Barkley, John Stockton, Karl Malone, just guy that has an incredible career and doesn't win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll end up working out for the Suns where Chris Paul is just very well rested by the time the playoffs start, and then he hasn't had the wear and tear of the season. But we also, like, we don't know, maybe maybe that injury lingers into the playoffs, and then it really is a problem for the Suns. I actually don't think that the news we got from Phoenix or Golden State is going to impact the regular season all that much. Like, Draymond Green's going to be out probably another month at least. Chris Paul's probably missing just about the rest of the regular season. I think the Suns are going to run away with the division. I mean, they basically have already in the Pacific. I don't think that's going to really matter there. I don't think it'll matter a ton for seeding. I think Phoenix still pretty likely gets the number 1 seed. But yeah, in the East, like, the Celtics are just so undervalued still. Like, it's insane to me this team is still 25-1. And I was saying the same stuff a couple of weeks ago. They were 50-1. Like, they're as good, if not better, than anyone. And I don't really see a good argument as to why they aren't further up. The only thing I can think of is that the lines just take a while to adjust. I mean, we still have the Nets being number 3 in the betting odds. And maybe the best case I can give for how odds are stale is if you go over to MVP, Chris Paul is still 30-1. Chris Paul has a 0.00% chance of winning the MVP this year. He's at most going to play 5 more games this season. And there he is right there, like eighth in odds for MVP. It basically just illustrates the point that we can't always use current odds as a reference point for how likely things are to happen. Like, we can't say because the Nets are 3rd in the betting odds, therefore they must be still a true contender. Right. I do think the Nets have a chance to reemerge as a contender if they get healthy, they get Ben Simmons back and all of that. But yeah, like, the fact that Chris Paul's up here should be the clearest example you can find of the odds are wrong. Like, Chris Paul he's not going to play until maybe the last 2 weeks of the season at best. So coming out of the break, I mean, I think we are going to see, like Chirag was talking about, teams with different levels of motivation that may choose to rest players because, they kind of have stuff locked up. Miami could wind up being this example where, like, Jimmy Butler has a lot more mileage on him than a lot of other star players. And if Miami's in a position where, like, the 1 seed is already clinched, we could see him sit a bunch down the stretch. Same with Kyle Lowry, and then maybe Bam too, who's dealt with injuries this year. We could see it. I mean, Chris Paul is probably the player we would have thought we would see it from for Phoenix at this point. Like, they probably just play their guys. But like, Joel Embiid's not going to be resting too many games. The Celtics aren't going to be resting guys. Like, these teams in the East they're fighting for the 1 seed, and they're also fighting to avoid the play-in game because it's so bunched up. So, like, aside from maybe the Heat, who are going to have their division locked up very early, that's kind of like a unique case compared to the Atlantic division where everyone still has a chance, basically. But, like, I think that's the important thing for me is just, if you're trying to predict a day in advance, like, is this guy going to rest tomorrow? Can I bet a line a day early and, like, just assume someone's going to be out? Looking at the way the standings shake out, like, that is going to be important. And then even if it's not the number one team, like we may be in early April and already basically know the Warriors are going to be the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Like at that point, the Suns may be far enough ahead, they're not catching them. And everyone else may be far enough behind that the Warriors aren't going to fall to that spot either. And Steph Curry may sit 6 games in the final month of the season. Like we could have some stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing I'm paying attention to. Strength of schedule, to get more specifically, though, I think the Lakers have one of the few hardest schedules going the rest of the year. And they don't have Anthony Davis for at least the next month, most likely. And they are currently around pick 'em to make or miss the playoffs. And I mean, the amount of times
minus 120, yes, minus 110, no.
Yeah, the amount of times that we've talked about, like you could have gotten plus 200, 300, 400, 500 on the Lakers to miss the playoffs. Like I'm still betting this at minus 110. I don't think they're getting in. I think they're going to end up 9 or 10, and you're essentially betting against them winning 2 consecutive games against some combination of the Clippers, Wolves, and maybe Portland, maybe it's New Orleans, whatever. But it's winning back-to-back games against 2 teams that are in a similar category to them. So minus 110 to not win two consecutive games, which is essentially what this bet is at this point. I'd still do it. Yeah, sorry, Shirag, but they may win the 2 games. Like
substantially healthier at that point too.
Yeah, they should have Davis back by then, but still, it's 2 games in a row.
No, I'm saying the Clippers. They could be healthier at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you could go the other way and just bet the Clippers to make it, because there is a scenario where both LA teams get in. One of them just beats Minnesota in the play-in, and then they're both in the playoffs. I like both of those things, honestly. Like, I think the Clippers are a good bet at minus 145 to get in, and the Lakers are a good bet at minus 110 to not get in. Maybe you just bet both of those things. They're very much dependent on the same things, obviously. Like if the Clippers get in, it's a lot less likely the Lakers get in, and vice versa. But yeah, I think like that bottom of the Western Conference is just a little bit off right now, where it's Minnesota losing 2 consecutive games in the play-in to the LA teams is not crazy. And I think Paul George is probably going to be back by then. Kawhi probably won't be. Do you guys have different feel? Like, because that's the wild card there too, right? Like we don't know what the Clippers are going to look like at that point.
I want to make sure resident Lakers fan Shirag here has the opportunity to defend his team.
I'm not defending anything. I've been on ever since this conversation has come up about the Lakers to miss the playoffs. It's been like,
so like when they acquired Russell Westbrook.
Say what?
So when they acquired Russell Westbrook, when the conversation first came up?
No, when they acquired Russell Westbrook, I was like, all right, you saw what he did with the Wizards. He was able to elevate that team to another level so they could make it into the playoffs. Yes, they weren't going to go anywhere, but he has this thing where he can elevate a team. But when you have a team that is so focused on getting shots or scoring and not playing defense, like that's the biggest problem. Like all the other role players in Washington were like, well, we got to play some defense or we got to score 150 points. Like you're not scoring 150 points on the Lakers. You were able to do that on the Wizards because that's kind of how they were set up. But on the team that is like the oldest team in, 25 years average age, like this is the oldest team in a long time. You're not going to run up and down and try to score 150 because that's how that setup was. And that's where I thought, okay, Westbrook can come in. He can allow LeBron to take some rest days. AD is going to get hurt. Like, all right. But what ended up happening is that he can't shoot layups. He's lost his bounce. Yeah, he's had that awesome dunk against Rudy Gobert, and he's done some really cool dunks, but he's shooting like 54% at the rim. Like, bro, how do you miss so many layups? But the reason why is because he's used to having so much bounce that those layups are usually dunks. And the other part of it, it's like, oh, well, shoot, I got to shoot a layup now. Like, And layups are hard when you're going 100 miles an hour attacking the rim and you think your legs are going to give you this bounce and you get there and you're like, I'm short. Let me shoot this now. It's like, I don't know, that I overestimated his upside and underestimated, I guess, the downside. So it is what it is. And I'm not happy about the Lakers this year, and I'm okay with betting to them to lose and miss the playoffs.
I do like Chirag, and Matt obviously brought this up, and we're looking at this page on the DraftKings Sportsbook that we've got this new tab available on betting on teams to make or miss the playoffs. So, we've talked about a couple of them. Are there any, and most are listed here, are there any here that do jump out at you as maybe a good time to get in on one of those two sites?
Yeah. There's one team in particular that we haven't mentioned yet that I like a lot. We just got news. John Collins didn't practice today, so for the short term, the Hawks are still in a bit of trouble, but I think plus 160 on that team to make the playoffs looks really good. This is just a team that I think has underachieved dramatically this year. They were arguably hit harder by COVID than just about anyone. A couple months ago, Trae Young missed a bunch of games. They had half their roster was essentially out. And then even when Clint Capella came back, he was struggling for a while. It seemed like due to the ramifications of how he felt while he was out. So I just think the Hawks are better than the market gives them credit for. We were actually talking about this last week when the Hawks had the home game against Cleveland. The Hawks opened as 1-point underdogs for that game and closed as 2.5-point favorites. They ended up winning by about 7. With the home court advantage, that was basically assuming those two teams were even because of the way the market adjusted, but that was still without John Collins playing. Mm-hmm. Like, I think Atlanta with Collins is a substantially better team than Cleveland. I think they're a lot better than the Bulls. I think you would put the Hawks probably in that second tier in the Eastern Conference where like maybe Philly, Miami, Milwaukee, and Boston are tier 1. And then the Nets, I don't know. Like, it's hard to classify the Nets because we don't know who's playing for the Nets. But to me, Atlanta's right below those top end teams. And to get this kind of value on them to miss the playoffs, yes, they're going to likely need to win some play-in games, because, or at least one of them, just because of where they are in the standings. Like, I don't think it's that realistic they clear all the way to the number 6 seed, but I think they have a really good shot to win a couple games, or maybe they just have to win one game once they get the team fully healthy. I mean, John Collins is a really good player, but the fact that they were still getting that much respect from the market without Collins versus a Cavs team who I think the average basketball fan is going to say the Cavs are a lot better than the Hawks. And that was a Cavs team that had LeVert, had Garland. Like, they were fully, that was one of the first games the Cavs had all their new guys playing, and they had Mobley and Allen playing. I still just think that it's indicative of how undervalued the Hawks are and how they could sneak up on people. So I like them a lot, but we kind of need John Collins back. They're playing the Bulls on Thursday, the first game after the break. Mm. And I guess the fact that Collins didn't practice today is a bad sign as far as his availability there. But still, I mean, the Hawks may only be 2 or 3 point underdogs in Chicago without him. The line's 4 right now. I would expect even without him, it still falls a bit. So if there's a team that I think is the most likely to exceed their first half, that I think people are sleeping on, that just is going to start playing a lot better out of the break, I think the Hawks are really the go-to for me. I can't really think of too many others that I would put in that category.
Any of these games on Thursday that you have your eye on early, Chirag?
No, I've been fully focused on NFTs and all that stuff. I don't have time to look at stuff beforehand, but I will start looking at it tomorrow. Matt, how's the model looking? Oh, yeah. Well, trying to quantify anyone without knowing who's going to play, for instance, like, we don't know if Collins is going to play. We don't know about Marcus Smart or Robert Williams. It seems like Robert Williams essentially rested against the Pistons. Yeah. Like, he was hurt against Philly, and then it said, wait, what?
I said could have used him, as it turns out.
Yes. That I had blocked that out of my head that they had lost that game. I forgot that I just mentioned it and I still wasn't processing the outcome of the game. You're very right about that. Yeah, my assumption is Williams is back, but Marcus Smart probably is out a bit longer. So, like, assuming that the Nets don't have any of their guys, Celtics -5, ultimately I think just winds up being a fair line. I think the Kings at +4.5 are going to look good at home against Denver. And then if Atlanta does get Collins back for this Chicago game, 4 points, like, I think they should be favored if Collins plays. So that would be a very, very appealing spot. That's really what I'm most interested in right now, is betting on the Hawks on Thursday if Collins plays.
Well, Chirag, I'll give you this one because, Matt was talking about it with Chris Paul earlier, and just, where the odds are going to go come the, again, second half, but the final quarter of the NBA season. Looking at the awards and regular season MVP, Matt and I, we talked a little bit about this. We had Nick Fryer on with us as well back on Friday, and I get how well Joel Embiid is playing, and I get that he's obviously very much in the conversation. +130 odds, though, while you got the Joker sitting at plus 290. And we're not talking about any long shots here. These are the top two guys, obviously. So I'm not sitting here, making a case for Tatum or for, Luka or something like that. To me, like, Joker is so clearly the MVP of the league this year. By basically every metric you could look at, it's insane to me that he's not the favorite at the moment.
The metric that matters is the record. The Nuggets were the number 3 seed last year, and then they fell after that Murray injury towards the end of the season, and they ended up being, I think they ended up in the 6th seed. They're once again in the 6th seed right now, with Ja Morant playing as well as he is, Curry being who he is, the Suns running away with it pretty much, the Jazz still ahead of them, Luka playing better. I just don't see the narrative. He's going to need to carry that team all the way into at least the top 3 of the Western Conference to be in the conversation. That's what it's going to take.
You just said it. He's in the same seed as last year, having a better statistical season with less help around him.
They fell into the 6th seed in the last week and a half. They were the 3 seed pretty much the entire year. The last time before Nikola Jokic that a player got the MVP out of a top 2 seed or top 3 seed was Russell Westbrook when he had that amazing triple-double
year.
That was the only time. The voters care about team record and who has the best team record from these guys right here. Sure, Devin Booker, but maybe he goes on a massive run and carries his team and they win all their games without Chris Paul, then that would put him in the conversation. But and DeMar DeRozan with the Bulls being ahead of the Sixers. But I just think that if Harden comes back to this team is just set up too well, and the Bucks are technically in the win column ahead of the Sixers. But as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that voter fatigue. Giannis already has 2 MVPs and the Defensive Player of the Year. He's not really getting any more awards unless they run away with the number 1 seed. That's what it's going to take for Giannis to get another award in this league. It's him going to have to be playing amazing and they run away with the number 1 seed. So just the way this sets up, the only guy that I see presenting value is Curry, because he has that upside as we saw in the All-Star game, and he can just go completely bonkers. And if the Suns struggle, then they can maybe come back a little bit and have a chance for the Warriors to take it off. So I think Curry is the best value here, but Joel Embiid is the rightful favorite.
We've only got a couple minutes left, guys. Not a lot of time to talk about this, but I do want to at least acknowledge it anyway, and that is Aaron Rodgers. After a long Instagram post late last night, a bunch of pictures from the season, thank yous to everybody, including his now ex-fiance and teammates, and came out of a 12-day cleanse and meditated his buns off and was just all sorts of thankful and gratitude everywhere for all that he has experienced over the last year and beyond, and goes on the Pat McAfee show today. And of course is asked, wait a minute, did you just retire, or are you about to retire, or what's going on with your head right now? And it was the same thing as I certainly expected, and I'm sure most people expected, which is, I haven't made any decisions about my future yet. And I just feel like, as looking at Green Bay as the 4th favorite right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook to win the Super Bowl next year, and him very uncertain as to 1, whether he's going to be back in Green Bay, and 2, whether he's going to play. I think this is just, are we staring down the barrel, Matt, of another offseason of Aaron Rodgers, a la his predecessor Brett Favre, holding the Packers hostage?
Yep. Yeah, I have no idea what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. I can't really speak to that, but it does seem like he's going to drag it out. He likes to do this.
Oh yeah.
And he played up the toe injury. I think we all can probably just acknowledge that at this point. He was hurt, but he was basically like, woe is me. I have to deal with this major injury every week. It was like, I'm so hurt and I'm such a hero for play. He didn't say literally those words, but that was what
that's what it
felt like. I will say, though, in terms of the odds here, the Packers were 1,600 to win the Super Bowl. I think it was a couple days after the Super Bowl ended a couple of weeks ago. So the line has gone down from 1,600 to 1,400, and the Broncos have gone up a bit from 2,000 to 2,200. So maybe that's some sentiment that he's considered more likely to stay in Green Bay than he was prior. I'm not reading much into what he's been talking about. But I do think if we get confirmation that Rodgers is staying with the Packers, 1,400 is still going to be really good value. Like, this team was favored to win the Super Bowl at the start of the playoffs this past season. So I'm not betting any of this right now.
Adams. He's a free agent.
I mean, you have to think if Rodgers stays, Adams stays, right? Like, he's probably not leaving unless Rodgers leaves.
If I would feel like if Aaron Rodgers were committed, which very clearly he's not, or at least not beyond a year, like if you're Devontae Adams at this stage of your career, you're not taking a 1-year deal. Like, you're wanting obviously a 4 or 5 year deal, and you know, millions upon millions of dollars. With Jordan Love, you know, as the presumed heir apparent, obviously barring a trade or whatever kind of move, are you wanting to commit yourself long-term to Green Bay when it may only mean 1 more year with Aaron Rodgers if you're Adams?
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, he like signing a 5-year deal where 4 of the years are with Jordan Love. That's probably not what Devontae Adams wants to do. So maybe that's part of what's being priced in here too. Like, if we knew that Rodgers and Adams were playing for the Packers this season, I think they would be the favorites to win the Super Bowl this coming year. But yeah, maybe it's not just the Rodgers uncertainty. Maybe that Adams uncertainty has something to do with it also.
Shrog, what do you think of all this?
I mean, just he's going to drag it out. He's a back-to-back reigning MVP. So, like, why not give him the star spotlight? You know he loves it. But from these odds perspective, I just have a feeling about the Bills. I just think they can finally put it together. They showed in that magical game against the Chiefs that they have what it takes. And if a coin flip goes in a different direction, whatever the situation is, maybe we're talking about the Bills in the Super Bowl holding the trophy. But I would say the Bills, even though they're the favorites, viable value here. And the 49ers are a team to watch because they have a lot of guys that are in contract situations. And if Trey Lance can come in and just have a magical run.
You said Tom Brady wrong.
No. If Trey Lance can come in and have a magical run, we've seen quarterbacks that run well and can pass do really well. And in this system, he can excel with the RPO. There's Jalen Hurts is the downside, and the full upside is that he turns into this year's Patrick Mahomes. Like, he has both. That's kind of where it's at right now. So I think 49ers are probably the best value here if they are able to bring some people in. And then the Bills are the favorites, I would say, are rightful favorites.
Oh, can't wait to meet his fiance and brother. It's gonna be a real treat. Get the whole Lance family out there. All right, we got to go. We've got more Madden simulations coming your way. 3 more, as a matter of fact, over the course of the rest of this Tuesday, with twos all over the place. Thanks to Daniel, our technical director, Eamon, our producer, of course, Matt Meiselman, Chirag Hira. I'm Adam Kaufman. The Slate comes your way every single day, talking about a whole range of things after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim each and every time, right around 5:15 Eastern. And of course, the Sweat is available to you 11 a.m. That is, of course, mornings on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter pages to get you all set up for all the DFS and betting news and odds and everything from the DraftKings Sportsbook that you need to know. Guys, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again later this week.
Peace.